Good evening, friend. It is good to have you back. Let your head settle into the pillow. Let your shoulders come down from the long day. Your eyes can close whenever they are ready, and your breathing can slow all on its own. Tonight we're going a long way back. Back to England in the year 900, to a single room of timber and thatch, with a fire burning in the middle of the floor. One ordinary farming household, one whole day, from the dark before dawn to the deep of the night. This is not the England of kings and battles. This is the England of the people who kept the fire. And here is the quiet question to carry with you, the one we will answer by the end. What was it like to be kept safe through the dark by hands you never saw? If this is the kind of history that helps you fall asleep, a gentle subscribe and a like help these long quiet nights find the people who are looking for them. There is no need to do a thing right now. Do it whenever you feel like it. And if you would like to, tell me where you're listening from tonight and what the hour is where you are. Perhaps you're in a cold bedroom with the lamp turned low. Perhaps you are on a long dark road, driving, with this playing soft. Wherever you are welcome here. So let the room grow dim, let the sound settle, and come with me now all the way back to a small house in England 1100 years ago and the ordinary day that is about to begin inside it. It is the last dark hour before the morning, and the house is still asleep. Picture it with me, slowly, the way you would let your eyes adjust to a dark room. A single low building of timber and thatch, standing on its own in the wide English country, with the fields black around it and no other light for miles. Inside, one room. The walls are made of upright posts with the gaps between them filled by woven rods and a hard pale daub of clay and straw. The roof comes down low and steep, thick with reed, and the floor beneath everything is beaten earth, worn smooth and firm by years of feet, strewn with fresh straw that gives off its own quiet, dry smell. Along the walls, wrapped in wool, the people of the house are sleeping. We will come to know them soon. For now they are only shapes in the dark, breathing slow, and we will not disturb them. Because there is one thing in this room that never fully sleeps. In the very middle of the floor, low and grey, sits the fire, or rather, what is left of it. Last night, as the house went to bed, someone raked ash over the burning embers and left them there, banked, covered, kept. All through the darkest hours the fire's been living underneath that ash, slow and small and patient, a low red life waiting for the morning. This is the most important thing in the whole house, and tonight we're going to follow it from this dark hour all the way round to the next. Somewhere in the dark a body stirs. One person of the house wakes before the others, as one person always does. Let us say her name was Leofrun. She is the wife of this farm, and this cold first hour of the day is hers. She does not need to see. Her hands know this floor in the dark. She rises from the warmth of her wool, and the cold of the room meets her at once, the deep settled cold of a house with no fire alight. She crosses the few short steps to the centre of the floor, and she kneels down by the banked hearth. Then she does the thing her mother did, and her mother's mother before her. She takes a stick, and she gently rakes the grey ash aside. And there, underneath, still alive after all these hours, is a bed of small red embers, glowing faintly in the dark. The whole warmth of the day to come is sleeping in that handful of coals. She feeds it. A few dry splinters of kindling first, laid close. Then she leans down close to the floor and she breathes. A long, low breath across the embers. The red brightens under her breath. She breathes again. A thread of smoke lifts. And then, quietly, with almost no sound, a small yellow flame stands up out of the ash and begins to climb the kindling. The light of it touches the room for the first time. It finds the black underside of the roof, tarred and dark from 1,000 such fires. It finds the pale daub of the walls. It finds the sleeping shapes along the sides of the room, and it does not wake them yet. Leofrun feeds the flame a little more, a few split lengths of wood, and the fire settles into itself and begins slowly to give out its heat. This is how every single day of this world begins, not with a clock, not with a bell, but with one pair of hands and one held breath, coaxing yesterday's fire into today's. In a world where making a brand new fire from cold was slow and difficult work, striking sparks from flint and steel into a nest of dry tinder, you did not let the fire die if you could help it. You kept it. You banked it at night and you woke it in the morning, and the same fire could live for weeks, for a whole winter, passed from dusk to dawn to dusk again by careful hands. There is something almost sacred in this first act of the day, though she would not call it that. She would call it simply the morning, simply what one does. But watch it as a stranger to this world and you cannot help but feel the weight of it. One person, awake before all the others, in the cold and the dark, coaxing warmth and light back into being with nothing but breath and patience. Everything that follows in the whole long day depends on this small quiet miracle at the hearth. Without it there is no warmth, no cooked food, no light, no gathering place. She's not only lighting a fire, she's opening the day itself, making the house habitable again, calling the world back from the dark. And she does it every morning, without ceremony, without thanks, as naturally as breathing. She sits back on her heels for a moment and lets it grow. The cold of the room begins, very slowly, to give way, and in that small circle of new light, the day has been quietly born. While the flame steadies, let your eyes travel round the room it lights. There is not much here, and everything here is needed. Along one wall stands the loom, tall and upright, the threads hanging weighted and still in the dark, waiting for the day's weaving. There are low benches, and along the walls the sleeping places of straw. There is the great pot near the fire. There are tools leaning by the door. A whole life fits inside these few paces of earth floor, and all of it turns around the flame in the middle, the way the planets were once thought to turn around the earth. Think, if you like, of how the night has just been spent. These people slept in two parts. They went down into a first deep sleep in the early dark, then woke gently in the middle of the night for a quiet wakeful hour, then sank into a second sleep until now. 2 sleeps, with a still hour held between them. We will come back to that hour later, near the end, because it is one of the most peaceful things this whole old world has to offer. For now it is enough to know that the house is rested, and that the fire is alive again, and that the woman who woke it is already turning to the next quiet task of the morning. Outside these walls the country lies in the last of its darkness. No street lamp anywhere, no glow on the horizon from any distant town, only the fields and the woods beyond them, and here and there, far off, another low roof with its own banked fire being woken by its own careful hands. That is the whole of the world at this hour, a scatter of small warm lights in a great dark land, each one kept alive by someone awake before the dawn, and ours is one of them. Because once the fire is lit, the work of the day can begin, and the first work is the gentlest of all. So let us stay here, in the growing warmth, and watch the house wake around its new flame. The fire is climbing now, and the room is coming back to life around it. The light reaches a little further with every minute. Leofrun sets a few more lengths of wood against the flame and lets it build, and the heat begins to push back the cold that had settled into every corner overnight. The smoke rises straight up from the middle of the floor, gathers in a soft blue layer under the roof, and drifts out slowly through the thatch. The way it has every morning this house has stood. There is no chimney here. There is only the fire, the smoke, and the thick reed roof that lets it breathe. And so the smell of wood smoke is in everything, in the walls, in the wool, in the hair of the sleepers, in the very bread they will eat. It is the smell of home in this world, and once you have breathed it, you would know it anywhere. Along the walls the others begin to stir. A child turns over in the straw. An older voice murmurs something low. The warmth is a summons, gentle and certain, and one by one the household comes up out of sleep and toward the fire, drawn to it the way we are all still drawn to warmth in the dark. But Leofrun is already moving on to the first real task of the day, and it takes her out of the warm room and into the grey cold beyond the door. The animals must be seen to before anything else. In this world, the beasts are not kept at arm's length. They are part of the household, and in the cold months some of them share the very building, penned behind a low screen at one end so that their warm breath helps to heat the room through the night. The cow, if the family is fortunate enough to keep one, and the ewes must be milked, and this is the first of the day's 2 milkings, for the animals are milked twice a day, morning and evening, every day, in a rhythm as old and as steady as the sunrise itself. She sits to the cow in the half-dark, her forehead against its warm flank, and the milk comes in thin, quick streams into the wooden pail, ringing at first against the empty wood, and then going soft and quiet as the pail fills. The animal's breath clouds in the cold. Her hands are warm from the work. This is a small thing, done 10,000 times in a life, and there is a deep plain peace in it that anyone who has ever tended an animal in the early morning would understand at once. The milk will become many things as the day goes on, some to drink, some set aside to make butter, worked patiently later in the day, some to make into cheese, pressed and kept. Nothing here is wasted. Everything the farm gives is caught and used and turned into something that will keep the household through the leaner times ahead. In this world you did not shop for the day's food. You made it and grew it and raised it and stored it. And a cheese pressed in the spring was a small quiet promise made to a hungrier month still to come. The children have their own small parts to play, and they learn them early. There are geese to be let out and watched, for a goose gives eggs and feathers and in its time a good dinner, and a fox will take one gladly if no one is minding. There are hens whose eggs must be gathered from wherever they have hidden them. There is fuel to be brought in, dry wood and sticks stacked near the fire so it never wants for feeding. None of this is hurried. A child of this house grows up inside the work the way a child of ours grows up inside a home full of talk, learning it without being taught, until one day the hands simply know it. And all the while the fire holds the centre of the room, low now and steady, tended by whoever passes it. It asks little through the day, a length of wood now and then, a glance to see it has not sunk too far. It is saving itself in a way for the evening, when it will become the whole warm heart of the house again. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because the day has only just begun, and there is a great deal of good honest daylight to spend first. There is a whole quiet world in that early milking if you have never known it. The animal is warm and patient and half asleep itself. The barn or the byre end of the house is dim and close, and smells of straw and beast and milk. The only sounds are the streams of milk against the wood, and the slow shift of the animal's weight, and the breathing, hers and the beast's, clouding in the cold air. There is no hurry in it, and no thought required, only the steady work of the hands and the slow filling of the pail, and a person doing it can let their mind drift wherever it likes while the body keeps the ancient rhythm. It is one of the oldest partnerships there is, between a person and the animals they keep, and it begins every single day, in the cold and the half-dark, with this. And then there are the other beasts to see to before the day can properly open. The pig in its pen, grunting for its food, the hens to be let out to scratch and lay, the oxen, the great engines of the farm to be fed and readied for the field. Each has its need, and each is met in an order so familiar it needs no thinking. The whole small farmyard brought awake and tended before the family has fully broken its own fast. Nothing here waits on human comfort. The animals come first, because the animals are the farm, and the farm is the life. And a household that kept its beasts well was a household that ate. Back inside, the fire is strong now, and the room is warm enough to sit in. There is a little food to break the night's fast, though it is a simple thing. A piece of the dark, heavy bread left from yesterday's baking, perhaps a little cheese. The children eat close to the fire. The grown ones talk quietly of the day's work, what the weather looks to be doing, which field the plough will turn today, whose turn it is to mind the geese. And through the shutters at last comes the first grey light of the real morning. Thin and cold and slow, It edges around the wooden slats and lays a pale line across the earth floor. The fire has done its early work. The house is warm, the beasts are milked, the family is fed, and now the day proper is about to open out because the men are pulling on their heavy wool, taking up their tools, and making ready to go out to the field while the light lasts. The fire will stay behind, kept low and steady all day by whoever is nearest, waiting for them to come home to it. It is always waiting. That is its whole quiet purpose in this world. So let us go out with the men now, out into the cold, bright morning and across the fields, to see the oldest and hardest and most faithful work of this whole world, the turning of the earth behind a team of slow, strong oxen. The door opens and the cold morning air comes in, and the man of the house steps out into it. Let us say his name was Wulfric. He is a Seol, which is the ordinary word in this world for a free farmer, a man with his own strip of land and his own duties to the Lord who holds the wider ground. He is not rich. Almost no one is rich in the way we would mean it, but he is free, and he has his land, and he has his oxen, and on a morning like this that is a kind of wealth in itself. The oxen are the great engine of this whole world, and they are waiting for him. Slow, heavy, patient animals, warm and enormous in the grey light, their breath rising in clouds. He speaks to them low as he brings the yoke. The way a man speaks to animals he has known for years. He fits the yoke across them and links them to the plough, and the beam and the share, the cutting iron that turns the soil, sit ready behind. Then, with a word and a touch, the whole great weight of it begins, very slowly to move. This is the work that feeds everyone. Without the turned field there is no grain, and without the grain there is no bread, no ale, no pottage in the pot, nothing at all to carry the house through the year. Everything we will see tonight, every warm thing, every full bowl, begins here, in the cold, behind these oxen, with this man leaning his weight against the plough to hold it true. And we know, almost word for word, how a man like Wulfric would have spoken of this morning, because a little after his time someone wrote it down. There was a teacher named Elfric who wrote a book to help young boys learn their Latin, and in it he has a master question working men about their lives. He asks a ploughman what he does, and the ploughman's answer has lasted 1100 years, and it is the truest voice we have from this whole world. I work hard, he says. I go out at daybreak, driving the oxen to the field, and I yoke them to the plough. Nor is the weather so bad in winter that I dare to stay at home for fear of my Lord. Sit with that for a moment, gently. There is no winter cold enough to keep him in. Not frost, not sleet, not the deep grey misery of a wet January dawn. Every single day the light will allow it. He is out here, leaning on the plough, turning the earth one slow furrow at a time. It is hard. He says so himself. And yet there is no complaint in it, only a plain, steady acceptance, the acceptance of a man who knows that this work is the reason his family will eat. The field turns over behind him in long, dark ribbons. The turned soil smells of cold earth and the coming year. Above him the sky lightens by slow degrees, from black to grey to the first thin colours of the day. Birds come down behind the plough to the freshly opened ground. The oxen lean into the yoke and rest when he lets them, and lean again. And so, furrow by furrow, the field is made ready. Look at the shape the plough leaves behind, because it is a shape you may have seen without knowing what it was. The heavy plough of this world did not just scratch the soil, it cut and lifted and turned it, throwing each furrow over against the last, so the field ended up laid in long raised ridges, with low troughs between them. Ridge and furrow, they call it. And here is the quiet wonder of it. In many parts of England those very ridges are still there, 1,000 years on, rippling under the grass of old pastures in the low evening light, the ghost of exactly this morning's work, exactly this man's plough. The land itself still remembers the shape of what he did. When you next see a green field lying in soft parallel waves, you may be looking at the handwriting of a ploughman like Wulfric, kept by the earth for 1,000 years. His hands by now are past feeling the cold. That is how it goes with this work. The first hour is bitter, and then the body warms to the labour, and the cold becomes just a fact of the air, no longer an enemy. Steam rises off the oxen, steam rises off the man, and the turned field grows, strip by dark strip out of the frozen grey ground. He will be out here for hours. The work is measured not in minutes, but in the slow crossing and recrossing of the field, there and back, the plough biting the same steady depth each time. It is the oldest rhythm in England, older than the language he speaks, older than the very idea of England, and it is being done this morning exactly as it was done by his grandfather, and will be done by his grandsons. And there is a strange peace in it too, for all its hardness, the peace of a task that asks the whole body and lets the mind go quiet. There is only the furrow ahead, and the oxen leaning, and the weight of the plough, and the cold air, and the slowly lightening sky. A man doing this work is not worrying about 100 small things the way we do. He is simply here, in the field, in the morning, doing the one thing there is to do, and there is a kind of rest inside that even in the labour of it. The world narrows to the length of the furrow. The mind empties, and the field grows behind him, dark and even, a whole morning's work laid down in long straight lines across the pale land. He knows this ground too, the way you know a thing you have walked all your life. He knows where it lies wet and where it lies dry, where the plough will bite easy and where it will fight him, where the good soil is and where the stones are. This is his field, or his Lord's field that he works, and he has turned it season after season, year after year, until there is hardly a yard of it his feet have not crossed 1,000 times. There is a deep belonging in that, a rootedness we can only envy a little, the belonging of a person to one patch of earth they know entirely, and return to with every turning of the year. But he does not do it entirely alone. There is one more small figure out here in the cold with him, and it is the one my heart goes to most in this whole scene. So before we leave the field, let us look at the boy. Just ahead of the oxen, walking backward, calling to them, there is a child. He is here because the plough needs two. One to hold it, steady and heavy, keeping the share at its true depth, and one to keep the oxen moving forward in a straight line. That second task falls to the boy. He walks before the team with a long stick, a goad, and he keeps them going, and he keeps them straight, and he calls to them the whole time in the way that beasts understand. We know he is here for the same reason we know about the ploughman, because in that same old book the master asks the ploughman a further question. "Do you have anyone with you?" he asks, and the ploughman says yes. He says he has a boy driving the oxen with a goad, and then he adds one small detail, and it is the kind of detail that reaches across 1,000 years and takes you by the hand. The boy, he says, is now hoarse from the cold and the shouting. Hoarse from the cold and the shouting. Let that little picture form in the warm dark. A child out since first light walking the frozen field backward, before a team of oxen calling and calling to keep them moving, until his voice has worn down to a rasp and his throat aches with it. His feet are cold, his hands are cold, his voice is nearly gone, and still he calls, because the oxen must be kept straight, and the furrow must be kept true, and this is his part in the great work of feeding the house. There is no cruelty in it, and it would be wrong to see it that way. This is simply how a child of this world grew, doing real work beside the grown, learning the whole business of survival from the inside one cold morning at a time, and there would have been warmth waiting for him too. The fire at home kept low all day, ready to thaw his hands, a bowl of hot pottage at the end of it, the pride, small and real, of having done a man's work in the field before he was a man. And the oxen themselves are a comfort of a kind once you know them. They are vast and slow and warm, and they do not hurry, and they do not startle easily, and a boy who spends his mornings walking before them comes to know each one, its name, its temper, which one leans, and which one holds back. They are the great engines of the whole farm, and they are treated with a care that is close to respect. The boy calling them across the frost is minding something precious, and somewhere inside himself he knows it. The frost lies white, in the shadows of the furrows where the low sun has not yet reached. The boy's breath goes before him in clouds. His feet find the cold, soft-turned earth, and the cold, hard, unturned ground, back and forth, hour after hour. And still the oxen come on behind him, patient and huge, and still he calls, his voice worn to a rasp, and still the field grows. It is a small heroism, the ordinary kind, the kind that never gets a song, and it happened every ploughing morning, in every ploughing field, across the whole of this quiet country. But out here, now, in the grey cold, he is only a boy with a sore throat and a stick keeping the oxen honest. And the wonderful thing, the thing that makes this whole channel worth sitting up all night for, is that we know he existed. Not this exact boy, perhaps, but a boy exactly like him, on a morning exactly like this, because a teacher long ago thought his hoarse voice was worth a single line in a schoolbook, and that one line kept him alive for us. And think of what the day held for him at its far end, because that is the part that warms the whole cold picture. The boy will not be out here forever. The light will climb, and the morning's ploughing will finish, and he will turn back toward the house with the men, toward the fire we woke at dawn, kept low and waiting all this while. There will be a bowl of hot pottage for him, thick and warm, put into his cold hands. There will be a place by the fire to thaw his aching feet and rest his worn-out voice. And there will be, though no one will say it aloud, the quiet respect of the household for a boy who did his part in the cold without being told twice. That is how a child of this world came to feel he belonged to it, by working inside it, by being needed, by earning his warm place at the fire with his own cold morning's labour. There is a kind of dignity in it that our world, for all its comforts, does not always give its children. This boy is not set aside from the real work of living, kept apart, entertained. He is inside it, trusted with something that matters, part of the team that feeds the house. His cold and his hoarse throat are the price of that belonging, and it is a real price, and it is really paid. But so is the belonging real. He is not a child watching the grown world from outside. He is in it, up to his cold ears, keeping the oxen straight so the family can eat, and there is a quiet strength that grows in a person from being needed that early and that truly. So when you think of this field, do not think only of the man and the oxen. Think of the boy, walking backward through the frost, calling to the beasts, part of the oldest work there is. And know that at the end of his cold morning the fire will be there for him, low and red and waiting. The same fire we woke at the start of the day, kept alive through all these hours by the hands back at the house. We will go back to that house soon, and to the warmth. But there is one more keeper out on the land this morning whose work we should see, further off up on the higher ground where the grass is, with the flock and the dogs. Let us go and stand with the shepherd a while. Up on the pasture, away from the ploughed fields, there is a figure standing still among his sheep with the dogs beside him and the wide sky all around. The shepherd's work is a different rhythm from the ploughman's. He does not lean and strain against a plough. He watches. He walks his flock out to the grass in the early morning, and then, for long, quiet hours, he simply stands over them, keeping them together, keeping them safe, moving them on to fresh ground when the grass is cropped low. It is patient work and lonely work, and it asks a great steadiness of a person to spend the daylight hours out on the open land with only the sheep and the dogs for company. We have his voice too from the same old book, and it is one of the warmest in it. In the early morning the shepherd says, "I drive my sheep to their pasture, and I stand over them, in heat and cold, with my dogs, so that the wolves do not devour them. Then he lists the round of his day. He leads them back to their folds at evening. He milks them twice a day. He moves their fold to fresh ground. He makes butter and cheese from their milk. And then he says the line that tells you who he is. And I am faithful to my Lord. Faithful. Sit with that word a moment. In the warm dark, it is the word he chooses for himself. Not clever, not strong, not important. Faithful. He is the one you can rely on, day after day, in heat and cold, to be out there on the hill with the flock so that the wool will grow and the cheese will be made and the lambs will come in their season. His whole worth, in his own telling, is that he can be trusted to keep the thing that was given to him to keep. And there it is again, quietly, the same thread that runs through this whole day. The ploughman turning the earth so the house can eat, the boy keeping the oxen straight, the shepherd standing faithful over the flock, each of them keeping something in the cold so that others will be warm and fed. None of them will be remembered by name. All of them together are the reason there is a world here at all. The number that shapes his day is a gentle one, and it is worth holding on to because a drowsy mind likes a number to come back to. Twice a day. He milks the ewes twice a day, morning and evening, just as the cow was milked at dawn back at the house. Twice a day, every day, the same two quiet acts, dawn and dusk, the steady heartbeat of a farming life. There is a great calm in work that returns like that. The same task at the same hour, wearing its soft groove into the years. Think, too, of all the things a single sheep gives, because it tells you why the shepherd's faithful watching mattered so much. There is the wool, of course, the whole basis of the family's clothing, sheared each year and worked all year. There is the milk made into cheese and butter that will keep. There is the meat in its time. There is even the skin and the very dung that feeds the fields. A flock was a slow, patient bank that paid out a little of everything year after year, and the shepherd on the hill was its keeper. No wonder he named himself Faithful. He was guarding the thing that clothed and fed the house through every season. It is quiet work, and the quiet is a large part of it. Whole hours pass with nothing to do but watch and walk and stand. The wind moves the grass. A dog shifts. A ewe calls to a lamb. Clouds drag their slow shadows across the far fields. A person alone on a hillside with a flock has a great deal of time to think, or to think of nothing at all, which is its own kind of rest even inside a working day. And when the weather turns, as it does, there is no shelter but a cloak and a hollow of ground and the patience to wait it out, in heat and cold, as he said, in heat and cold, keeping the faith with the flock. The dogs lie near him in the grass, ears up, watching the flock as closely as he does. The sheep crop and drift and crop again. The light moves slowly across the high ground, and somewhere below, out of sight, the plough is still turning its field, and the house is still smoking gently into the morning air, and the whole small world is going about its work under the wide pale sky. And though he is alone out here, he is not lonely in the way we might fear, because he is never truly apart from the world he serves. He can see, across the fields, the thin smoke rising from his own house, and know the fire is kept there, and the pottage is warming, and his people are at their work. He can see, far off, the ploughed field growing dark behind the oxen. He is one part of a whole that is all around him, each keeper at their own task, all of them held together by the same day, the same weather, the same slow turning toward evening and home. The shepherd on his hill is a thread in a wide quiet cloth, and he knows it, and the knowing keeps him company as surely as the dogs do. And when the evening comes, he will have brought his flock through another day, whole and fed and safe, and that is a quiet accomplishment repeated so often it is never remarked upon. And yet the whole clothing and much of the feeding of the house depends on it. Faithful, he called himself, and you see now what the word truly meant. It meant being there, every day, in heat and cold, standing over the thing given into your care so that it came to no harm. It is not a grand kind of goodness. It wins no songs and earns no memory. But it is the kind of goodness the whole world quietly runs on. Then and now, the plain reliability of people who simply keep doing the thing that must be done, day after day, for the sake of others who may never know their name. He will bring the flock down as the light begins to fail, and fold them safe for the night, and turn toward home himself, toward the same fire we are all in the end turning toward. But there is a whole world of work happening back at that house too, work we have not yet seen, the steady indoor labour that never stops. So let us leave the shepherd to his faithful watching, and go back down to the house and to the 2 round stones that grind the day's bread into being. Back inside, in the warmth, the day's other great labour has been going on all along, close to the fire in the hands of the women of the house. It is easy, looking back at this world, to think the important work happened out in the fields. But the house was a workshop too, humming quietly from morning to night, and much of what kept the family alive was made right here, on this earth floor, in the firelight. Leofrun is at the centre of it, as she was at the centre of the morning, and her day is as full as any ploughman's. Start with the bread, because bread is the very ground of life in this world, eaten at every meal, the thing that fills the belly when there is little else. And bread begins with grain, and grain must be ground, and grinding is done by hand, here, between 2 heavy round stones. This is the quern. The lower stone sits fixed. The upper stone turns above it, with a hole in the middle where the grain is fed in, and a handle to work it round. And so, morning after morning, the grain of the farm is poured in a little at a time and ground slowly to flour between the 2 stones, turn after turn after turn, until there is enough for the day's baking. It is heavy, repetitive work, and it is done every single day, because there is no keeping great stores of flour, only the grain, ground fresh as it is needed. The 2 stones are among the most precious things the household owns. Think of them the next time you hold a soft loaf from a shop. Behind every mouthful of bread in this world lies a woman's arm turning the top stone round and round, and the low grinding song of stone on stone, and grain becoming flour, a handful at a time. There is a rhythm to the grinding, and like so much in this world it settles into the body until the hands barely need the mind. The stone turns, and the flour gathers at the rim, and it is swept up and the quern is fed again. Women often ground and work to a song, or to the plain beat of the task itself, and a house at its morning work would have hummed with these small steady sounds, the quern turning, the loom's weights knocking softly, a child's voice, the fire ticking, the low talk of women who had done all this together 1,000 mornings before. It is the sound of a place that is thoroughly, deeply lived in, and so much of this work looks forward, past today, to a colder, leaner time. The butter is worked and salted so it will keep. The cheese is pressed and set aside to age. The ale is brewed and stored. Grain is held back carefully in the store, counted against the long months when nothing grows. This household is always quietly feeding its own future, setting a little aside from every good day against the certainty of a hard one. There is a deep steadiness in people who live that way, close to the edge and yet unhurried, trusting the round of the year and their own careful hands to carry them through. It is a kind of wisdom we have half forgotten, and it filled every ordinary hour of a house like this one. The flour becomes dough, and the dough becomes flat, dark loaves, baked on the hot hearthstone or in the ashes at the edge of the fire. It is heavy bread, made mostly of barley or rye, not the fine white wheat the wealthy ate. But it is warm, and it is filling, and fresh from the fire it fills the whole house with a smell that mixes with the wood smoke into something that is simply the smell of being fed and safe. Then there is the ale. Nearly everyone in this world drinks ale, grown children and all, because the water is not always to be trusted, and the ale is safer and full of the goodness of the grain. And the ale, like the bread, is brewed here at home by the women from the same barley, a steady patient business of soaking and warming and waiting. A house that could brew good ale was a house that ate and drank well, and the skill of it passed from mother to daughter along with everything else. There is the butter too, worked from the morning's milk, and it is patient, rhythmic, quiet work. The cream is set aside to rise, and then it is worked and turned, on, until something shifts inside it and the butter comes, gathering out of the liquid into soft golden lumps. It takes time and a steady arm, and a kind of faith in the middle stretch when nothing seems to be happening at all, and then quite suddenly it turns, the way these slow things do, and there is butter to be gathered and salted and set by to keep. A little goes on to the day's bread, the rest is stored against the leaner weeks. Like everything here, it is made now by hand, from what the farm gives, and kept carefully for a hungrier day still to come. And the cheese, from the same milk, pressed and set aside in the cool of the store, aging quietly through the weeks into something firm and lasting. Milk does not keep in a world without any cold to store it in, but butter keeps, and cheese keeps, and so the fleeting richness of the morning's milking is caught and turned into forms that will last through the year. This is the deep logic of the whole household, running under every task, catching the good of each day, and folding it forward into the future, so that nothing is lost and the lean times are always, quietly, provided for. A cheese on the shelf is a summer's day saved up for a winter's one, and over all of it, always, there is the wool. This may be the truest never-ending work of the whole house. The wool comes off the sheep the shepherd keeps, and then it must be cleaned, and combed, and spun into thread on a hanging spindle, and then woven into cloth on that tall upright loom against the wall. For a great many women this was near enough a full-time craft, done in every spare moment, because every scrap of clothing the family wore began as wool on a sheep's back, and passed through these hands to become a tunic, a cloak, a blanket against the winter. We will come back to the loom tonight, in the firelit evening, because there is something deeply calming in the sight of it. For now it is enough to know that it is never truly finished, and that the making of cloth is the quiet music under this whole household's life. So the house is not a place of rest during the working day. It is a place of steady, skilled, unhurried labour, grinding and baking and brewing and spinning, all of it close to the fire, all of it feeding and clothing the people we have met. And slowly, while all this goes on, something begins to change in the quality of the light at the shutters. It softens, it lengthens. Without anyone marking the exact moment, the day has passed its height and begun, gently, to lean toward evening. And with the evening comes the best part of this whole story, the drawing in, the coming home, the turning of the entire world toward the fire. So let us follow the light as it begins to fail, and watch the day come home. There is a certain hour near the end of a working day when the whole world seems to breathe out and begin quietly to come home. It starts with the light. In this world there is no sudden switching from day to night. There is only the slow softening of the afternoon, the sun sliding down the sky, the shadows stretching long across the ploughed fields, the light going from white to gold to a deep amber that lies low along the land. And with that change something shifts in everyone who is out working in it. The pace eases, the eye lifts more often to the horizon. The body, which has laboured since first light, begins to feel the pull of the fire and the food and the rest that are waiting. Out in his field, Wulfric straightens his back and feels the whole long day in it. The furrows are turned, the oxen are tired, their great heads low, and they know as well as he does that the work is nearly done. He unhitches them from the plough at last, and the sudden lightness of them without the great weight behind is almost like a sigh. He turns them toward home, and they go willingly, because they know where the evening leads as surely as he does, to fodder and water and rest. Up on the hill the shepherd is gathering his flock. The sheep who have drifted and grazed across the pasture all day are brought slowly together by the dogs and turned down the slope toward the fold. He counts them in the old way as they pass, making sure the number that went up is the number that comes down. Then he folds them safe for the night, close penned against the dark and whatever moves in it, and only then, his charge secure, does he turn his own steps toward the low roof and its rising smoke. For everywhere across this small world the same thing is happening at once. The people who scattered out at dawn to their separate labours are all now turning back toward the one warm point they share, the house, and above it, drawing them in like a signal, is the thin, steady column of smoke from the fire that has been kept alive all day, waiting for exactly this hour. Inside, Leofrun and the others feel the day turning too, and the shape of the work changes to meet it. This is the hour to bring things in. The animals that share the house are brought to their end of the room and settled. Fuel is carried in and stacked close to the hearth, enough to see the whole long evening through, because no one wants to go out into the cold and dark once the house is shut. Water is fetched. The tools of the day are set by the door. Everything that will be needed is gathered inside, within the reach of the firelight, before the door is closed on the night. There is a whole quiet language to this gathering in, if you watch for it. The way a person pauses at the threshold to knock the mud from their feet. The way the last armful of wood is judged by enough, more than enough, so no one has to go out again. The way the water is set where it will not freeze, and the tools are leaned where they will be found in the dark, and the door is checked and checked again. None of it is thought about exactly. It is done the way you might lock up your own home at night, half asleep, the hands knowing the round without the mind. But every small act of it is a kind of care, a household folding itself up safe for the night, and there is a deep old comfort in the doing of it. Feel, too, how the cold changes the meaning of the fire at this hour. All day the fire was kept low, a small ember life, hardly needed while the sun was up and the work kept bodies warm. Now, as the light dies, and the temperature drops with it, the fire becomes the thing that matters most in the world again. It is built up, it is fed, and the warmth of it, spreading out into the darkening room, is met by every person who steps in from the cold with a kind of gratitude that we, who can warm a whole house at a touch, can only half imagine. To come in from a freezing field to a built-up fire was one of the plainest and greatest pleasures this world had to give, and it was given, freely, every single evening. There is a lovely purposefulness to this hour, the sense of a household making itself ready, drawing everything it loves and needs into one small safe circle. And at the centre of that circle, the fire is being built up again for the first time since the morning. All day it has been kept low, a quiet ember life, asking little. Now, as the light fails outside, it is fed properly once more, and it begins to climb, and to throw its warmth and its glow wider across the room, reclaiming the space it will hold all evening. One by one, the people of the house come in out of the falling light. Wulfric, with the cold of the field still on his clothes. The boy, hoarse and tired and glad. The shepherd, last down from the hill. They step through the one low doorway, out of the great darkening world and into the small bright one, and each of them, as they cross that threshold, leaves the cold behind and takes up the warmth. There is only the one door. Everything and everyone the house holds tonight comes in through it, and once the last of them is inside, that door will be shut against the night, and the whole world will shrink gently to the size of a single firelit room. There is a tiredness in all of them now that is the good kind, the kind that has been earned. The ploughman's back and shoulders carry the whole long morning of leaning on the plough. The boy's throat is worn raw. The shepherd's feet have walked the hill all day, and every one of them is glad, deeply and simply glad, to be turning at last toward the warm room and the fire and the food. This is one of the plainest pleasures a body knows, the pleasure of rest after true labour, and it was a pleasure this world had in full measure, because the labour was true and the rest, when it came, was real. We chase that feeling now in 100 complicated ways. They had it handed to them every evening, at the end of every working day, waiting for them behind the one low door. And that shutting of the door is the next quiet thing we will do together, because it is one of the most comforting small acts in this whole world, the securing of the house against the dark. So let us watch the last of the family come in, and then close the door on the night with them. Now the last of them is inside, and it is time to close the door. It is a simple thing, and it is one of the oldest comforts there is. The heavy door is drawn shut against the cold and the dark and barred, and in that one small movement the whole of the outside is set aside. The wind, the falling night, the wide black country, all of it is left on the far side of the wood, and this side, our side, becomes a single warm room with a fire in the middle of it, and everyone we care about gathered close. There is a deep, ancient satisfaction in the shutting of a door at nightfall. You have felt it yourself on a cold evening, drawing the curtains and hearing the latch click. It is the same feeling, exactly the same, reaching back across 1100 years. The room it closes us into is small. We should sit with how small, because it shapes everything. A house like this might measure only about 10 feet by 12, no more than 4 paces from wall to wall. One room, that is the whole of it. In that single space the family cooks and eats and works and talks and sleeps, and at one end, behind a low screen, the animals stand and breathe through the night. There are no separate rooms for separate things. There is no privacy as we would know it. There is only the one warm space shared by everyone, lit and heated by the one fire. And there is a closeness in that, in every sense of the word, that is hard for us to imagine now. And within that small closed room, everyone finds their place, easily, without a word, because they have found it 1,000 times before. There is where the fire is tended from. There is where the food is worked. There is where each person sits, and later where each person sleeps. A house this small teaches its people to live gently alongside one another, to move around each other without friction, to share a single space through a whole long evening and a whole long night. We might find it close, even cramped, used as we are to rooms enough to scatter into. But there is a warmth in that closeness, a knitting together that a scattered household loses. Here, no one is ever far. No one is ever shut away. The whole family lives within arm's reach of the fire and of each other, all evening, every evening, and the smallness of the room is a large part of what makes it a home. The walls that hold the warmth in are thick and simple. Upright timbers, and between them the woven rods packed with daub, that hard mixture of clay and straw. Against the inside of the walls hang lengths of coarse cloth, plain hangings pinned up to stop the draughts that work their way through even the best made daub. The floor is the beaten earth we have walked on all day, strewn with straw. The roof is the low reed thatch, black on its underside from years of smoke. It is not a grand place, but it is tight, and it is warm, and on a cold night it is everything. And notice how the closing of the door changes the very sound of the world. A moment ago there was the wide open evening, the wind across the fields, the far cry of a bird, the huge soft murmur of the outdoors. Now the door goes to, and all of that is muffled and set outside, and the sounds of the room come forward instead, close and warm, the crackle of the fire, the shift of a foot on the earth floor, the low voices of the family, the breath of the beasts. The world shrinks to what you can hear within 4 walls, and everything you can hear within them is familiar and safe. There is a deep comfort in that narrowing of the world, the same comfort a child feels when the bedroom door is pulled almost closed and the house goes quiet around them. Beyond the shutters, the true dark is coming down, and it is a dark we can barely picture now. No lamp burns in any window for miles, save the faint firelight leaking through shutter and thatch. No glow rises from any town beyond the hills. When the night is cloudy, there is no light at all out there. None. A blackness so complete that a person could not see their own hand. The people of this world knew that dark in a way we never will, and they had a healthy respect for it. The night belonged to the cold and to the wild things, and in the old beliefs to stranger things too, the half-seen shapes the imagination puts into the dark when there is no light to argue with them. But here is the gentle truth of it, and it is the truth this whole channel is built on. They were not afraid, not really, not inside, because they knew exactly what to do about the dark. You shut the door, you barred it, you built up the fire, you gathered everyone in, you made the small warm circle and you kept it, and the dark could do what it liked out there because it could not come in here. The answer to the night was not to fight it. The answer was to make a warm, safe place and hold it until morning, and that answer worked, night after night, for 1,000 years. And there is something else the shut door gives, beyond warmth and safety, and it is one of the sweetest things this world had. It gives everyone in. When the door is barred, the whole household is inside it, together, and no one is out in the dark and no one is missing, and for the length of the night the family is complete and gathered and whole. In a world where the day scattered everyone to their separate labours, the ploughman to his field, the shepherd to his hill, the children to their small tasks, the shutting of the door each evening drew them all back into one room, one warmth, one circle. The night was the time the family was most itself, and the barring of the door was the small daily act that made it so. You can feel it settle over them, that completeness, as the door goes to, the counting, without counting, of the faces in the firelight, all here, all in, the tension of the open day, the watching of weather and light and work loosens and lets go. Now there is only the room and the fire and each other and the long, soft evening ahead. Whatever the dark does out there, it does it without them. They are inside and together, and that is the whole of what the shut door means, and it is enough to build a feeling of deep safety on, night after night, for 1,000 years. So Wulfric bars the door, and stands a moment in the firelight, and feels the day's cold begin to lift from his shoulders. The house is secure, the animals are in, the family is gathered, the fire is climbing. Outside the night can gather all it wants. In here, the evening, the good part, the warm heart of the whole day, is just beginning. And all of it, every scrap of comfort in this closed warm room, comes from the thing burning in the middle of the floor. So let us turn to it now, and give the fire the attention it deserves, because in a house like this the fire is very nearly everything. In the very centre of the room, on the bare earth, the fire is burning, and everything else arranges itself around it. There is no fireplace here, no chimney breast, no grate against a wall. The fire sits in the middle of the floor, on a low raised bed of clay, open on every side, and the whole house is built around it the way a life is built around a heart. People sit around it in a ring. The warmth goes out from it in every direction. The light of it reaches every wall. It is the one source of heat, the one source of light, the place where all the food is cooked, and the plain physical centre of the household's world. To this day, when we talk about the heart of a home, we are really talking about its hearth. The two words are cousins, and they come from exactly this, a fire in the middle of a room with a family gathered round. Because there is no chimney, the smoke does something we would find strange, and they found ordinary. It rises straight up from the fire into the roof space, and there it spreads out into a soft blue layer that hangs under the thatch, and slowly, gently, it finds its way out through the reeds themselves. The whole roof breathes the smoke out over hours. It is why the underside of the thatch is black and glossy with tar, and it is why everything in this world smells forever of wood smoke. That smell is in the walls and the wool and the bread and the hair of every person here. It is the smell of warmth, of safety, of home. If you could stand in this room tonight, it is the wood smoke you would remember longest. That soft, sweet, resinous smell threading through everything, the very perfume of being indoors and alive on a cold night. The smoke has its uses too, which is one of those quiet truths this world was full of. It keeps the thatch dry from beneath, and it keeps the insects and the vermin out of the roof, and it helps to preserve whatever is hung up in the rafters to cure. The same smoke that stings your eyes if you stand too tall is also protecting the very house it fills. It is a small, everyday example of something these people understood in their bones, that the same thing can trouble you and keep you at once, and that you take the whole of it together, the sting with the blessing, because that is simply how the world is made. Feeding the fire is a constant gentle task, and it falls to whoever is nearest, though tonight it is mostly Leofrun who tends it, as she woke it this morning. A length of wood laid on when it burns low. The embers nudge together. The whole thing coaxed to the right steady heat, not too fierce, not too low, a working warmth that will hold all evening on a careful supply of fuel. She knows this fire the way you know a thing you have tended every day of your life. She can read it at a glance, and it answers to her hands. There is a particular pleasure, too, in the sound of a good fire. It is a sound this whole world knew intimately. The soft, steady murmur of the flames, the occasional settling shift as a log burns through and drops, the faint hiss and tick of the wood giving up its warmth. It is one of the oldest and most soothing sounds there is, older than any music, and the people of this house had it every single evening. The fire talking quietly to itself in the middle of the floor while the family gathered round. If you have ever sat before a real fire and felt your whole body slow and soften at the sound of it, then you have touched something these people lived inside every night of their lives. The fire was their television, their radio, their warm companion in the dark, and it asked nothing of them but a little wood and a little care. And the light it throws is a living light, quite unlike the flat still light we know. It moves. It flickers and leaps and sinks and rises, and the shadows move with it, so the whole room seems gently, softly alive, breathing with the flame. Faces lit by firelight are warmer, kinder, older somehow, their lines softened and their eyes bright with the moving glow. There is a reason we still light candles when we want a room to feel tender and close. It is the memory of exactly this, the living light of a real flame, which for the whole long span of human history was the only light there was after dark, and which shaped every evening, every face, every gathering, back to the very beginning. And what a difference it makes to the room. Beyond the reach of its light the corners are dim, and the dark presses close. But here, in the ring of the firelight, everything is warm and golden and clear. Faces are lit from below in that soft moving glow. The smoke drifts up blue into the black roof. The animals shift and breathe at their end, and the family settles into the space around the flame, closer as the night deepens, because the fire is the one true centre of the house, and on a cold night in the year 900 there is nowhere on earth any of them would rather be. And notice how the whole room arranges itself in answer to the fire, the way a life arranges itself around the things that matter most. The warmest places, closest in, are where the old and the young go, those who feel the cold most. The work that needs light and heat is drawn near. The sleeping places line the walls, close enough to catch the warmth, far enough to be out of the smoke. Even the animals at their end, a place to give and take heat with the room. Nothing is accidental. The whole geography of the house, worked out over generations, bends toward the fire in the middle, because the fire in the middle is what makes the house livable at all. To find the warm centre of a thing and build everything else around it is a kind of wisdom, and this house had it, quite literally, at its heart. This one fire will carry the whole evening. It will cook the supper. It will light the talk and the tales. It will warm the wool being spun beside it. And at the very end of the night it will be banked down again under its ash, the way it was this morning, to keep its low life through the dark until someone wakes it once more. But all of that is still ahead. For now the fire is high and warm and the house is closed and safe, and the very first thing it will give the family after this long working day is a hot meal. So let us see what has been simmering at the edge of these flames, waiting for everyone to come home. There is a pot at the edge of the fire, and there has been all day, and now at last it is time to eat from it. This is the pot that feeds the house, and it holds the dish that more than any other was the daily food of this world. Pottage. The word itself has almost slipped out of our language now, but for 1,000 years it was the meal of the ordinary English family, and it is a beautifully simple thing. It is a thick stew of grain and whatever else the house can add to it, kept simmering slowly at the edge of the fire, ladled out warm at the end of the day. Grain for the body of it, barley or rye, beans, whatever green things the garden gives, and the herbs of it. Perhaps, on a good day, a little bacon or a bone for the richness. And it simmers there for hours, thickening, deepening, filling the whole room with its plain good smell. There is a wisdom in the pot that is easy to miss. It is never quite empty and never quite finished. A little is taken out, and a little more is added, and it goes on from day to day, a living thing at the edge of the hearth, always warm, always ready. Whatever the farm produces finds its way in. Nothing is wasted. A handful of this, a few of those, the end of yesterday's something, all of it goes into the pot and comes out as a hot, nourishing supper at the close of a working day. In a world without any way to keep food cold, the fire and the pot together were how you made sure there was always something warm to eat. Leofrin ladles it out now into wooden bowls, one for each of them, and the family takes them and settles close to the fire to eat. And here is a small thing that tells you how far away this world is from ours. They eat with a knife and a wooden spoon, and with their fingers and nothing else. There is no fork. The fork simply does not exist in this world at all, so the pottage is spooned, and the bread is torn, and the whole meal is eaten with the plainest of tools, close to the warmth, with the firelight on everyone's faces, and there is the bread. The dark, heavy, honest bread we watched being ground into being this morning between the two stones. It is barley bread, or rye, close-textured and filling, nothing like the soft white loaf we know. But warm from the hearthstone, torn and dipped into the hot pottage, it is exactly the food a cold and tired body wants at the end of a long day. Bread and pottage. That is the meal. It was the meal of the poor for 1,000 years, and there is nothing sad in it, because it fills the belly and warms the bones, and it is shared in the firelight with the people you love. If the day has been kind, there may be a little more, an egg from the hens the children mind, or from a duck or a goose, a piece of cheese pressed from the milk of the cow or the ewes, aging quietly in the store. These are not feast foods. They are the everyday small riches of a farm that keeps its own animals, and they make the plain meal a little fuller, a little better. Meat, real meat, fresh meat, is rarer for a family like this, kept for the special days, the feast days, the killing time in the dark of the year. Most evenings are pottage and bread, and most evenings that is plenty. There is a whole philosophy of eating folded into that simple pot, though no one here would ever call it that. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is refused. The pot takes whatever the day and the season give and turns it into warmth. A few more beans in a lean week, a scrap of bacon in a good one, the last of the greens before they turn, all of it goes in, and all of it becomes supper. There is no fixed recipe, no right way, only the endless gentle improvising of a household making the most of what it has. And because it simmers so long and so slow at the very edge of the fire, it takes almost no watching, giving up its goodness quietly through the whole day, while the real work goes on elsewhere. The fire cooks it for free, you might say, as it does everything else simply by being kept. And the bread that goes with it carries the whole day inside it, if you think back. The grain that was grown in the ploughed field, and reaped, and threshed, and stored. The flour ground this very morning between the two heavy stones, turn by hand. The dough worked and shaped and set to bake on the hot hearthstone. Every loaf is the end of a long chain of patient labour reaching all the way back to the seed and the soil, and every mouthful of it, torn and dipped in the warm pottage. Is that whole chain come home at last as food? They did not eat lightly, these people, in the sense that mattered. They knew exactly what their bread had cost and whose hands had made it, and that knowing was a kind of seasoning we have quite lost. Watch them eat, for a moment, in the warm dark. The tiredness of the day is on all of them. The good tiredness of work finished. The bowls are warm in their hands, the fire is close. The children eat quickly, the way hungry children do. The grown ones eat slower, letting the warmth of the food and the fire spread through them, feeling the day's cold finally fully leave. No one is in a hurry. There is nowhere else to be, and nothing else to do, but sit here in the firelight and be fed and be warm and be home. It is, in its plain way, one of the most contented scenes this whole world has to offer. And there is something to drink, to go with it, made under this very roof from the same grain that made the bread. It is warm and mild, and it is shared by every soul in the house, down to the children, and it is one of the small steady comforts of this world. So once the bowls are set aside, let us pour out the ale, and gather in properly at the table for the fellowship of the evening. With the pottage eaten, there is the ale, and the ale is its own small warmth in this world. Almost everyone here drinks it, and that includes the children, and there is a good plain reason for it. The water of this world could not always be trusted. It might carry sickness, and no one quite understood why, but everyone knew that ale was safer, and so ale, weak and mild and nourishing, became the everyday drink of every age. It is brewed here at home, by the women, from the same barley that makes the bread, a patient business of malting and mashing and waiting that fills the house with its own warm sour smell for days. The ale of this world is not strong the way we might imagine. Much of it is a mild, thin, wholesome drink, more like a liquid bread than anything else, full of the goodness of the grain, meant to be drunk in quantity through the day and to do a body good. It is poured out now and shared around, and there is a fellowship in the sharing. Cups and bowls pass from hand to hand. There may be one good vessel that goes round the whole company, each person drinking and passing it on, and there is an old warmth in that, a sense of a household that eats and drinks from the same store, out of the same bowl, gathered at the same fire. Nothing here is separate. Nothing here is each to their own. It is all shared, all common, all held together, and the ale going round the ring in the firelight is the very picture of it. On a special night there might be mead, which is the sweeter, finer drink, made from honey left to ferment, golden and warming and kept for the days that matter. Mead is the drink of celebration, of the feast, of the guest honoured under the roof. It is not an every evening thing, but its very existence tells you that this world knew how to mark a good day, how to lift an ordinary night into something warmer, and that even in a hard age there was honey and sweetness, and the making of a little gladness when the moment called for it. And there is a warmth in the drink itself that is more than the warmth of the fire, the mild loosening ease of it at the end of a hard day, the way it softens the shoulders and gentles the talk, and turns a tired household toward contentment. Nothing strong, nothing that would trouble the morning, only a mild good drink taken slowly in company, the plainest and oldest of comforts. It is easy to forget, looking back at a world so full of labour, that these people knew how to be at ease, how to let a warm evening be a warm evening, but they did. They worked as hard as almost anyone who has ever lived, and then, at the end of the day, they sat by the fire with a cup of their own ale and let the hardness go, and that too is part of the truth of this world. They gather in close now, around the fire, for in a house of a single room, every space is many things by turns. The same floor is a place to eat, and then a place to work, and then a place to sleep, each in its turn as the evening wears on. There is little room here for anything that serves only one purpose. The very bench you sit on to eat from is the bench you will lie down on later, wrapped in your wool. A small house teaches its people to make everything earn its place, and there is a neat quiet economy in that which is rather beautiful to see. And so they sit, fed and warm, the ale going round, the fire high, the day's work behind them, and the whole soft evening ahead. This is the hinge of the day, the moment it turns from labour to rest, from doing to simply being. Outside the dark is complete now, and the cold is deep. In here there is light and warmth and food and drink and company, everyone the households gathered in one small bright room. If you had asked any of them what happiness was, they might not have had a word for it, but they were living it, in this hour, whether they named it or not. The brewing of the ale is his own small art, and like so much here it lived in the hands of the women and passed from mother to daughter down the years. It began with the grain, soaked until it woke and sprouted, then dried, then crushed and steeped in warm water until the sweetness came out of it, and then left to work and turn on its own into something that would keep and cheer and nourish. It filled the house with its own smell for days, warm and sour and yeasty, mixing with the wood smoke and the baking bread into the whole, deep scent of a house that fed itself. A woman known for good ale was valued for it, and rightly, because good ale was a real skill and a real comfort, and a house that brewed well was a house that lived well, in the small daily way that mattered most. And the sharing of it around the fire is the picture of something this world understood far better than we do. There was no such thing here as each person with their own, kept separate, counted out. The ale came from one brewing, poured into shared cups, passed hand to hand around the same warm ring. The bread came from one baking, torn and handed round. The pottage came from one pot, ladled into every bowl. Everything was held in common and shared out, and that sharing was the very substance of the household, the daily proof that they were one thing and not many, one family drawing on one store, warmed by one fire, seeing the night through together. We have gained a great deal since this world, but we have quietly lost some of that, the deep plain warmth of the shared bowl, and it is a good thing to remember on a night like this that it was ever there at all. There is a plainness to their pleasures that we have half lost, and it is worth resting on. No entertainment is brought in from outside. No music plays but what someone here makes. There is nothing to look at but the fire and each other, and yet the evening is full, richly full, of exactly the things that still make an evening good, warmth and food and the company of people you belong to. Strip away everything we have added since, all the light and noise and distraction, and this is what is left underneath, and it turns out to be enough. It was always enough. Now the meal is done, and the bowls are set aside, and the long soft heart of the evening opens out before them. This is the one time in the whole long working day that belongs to no task at all. It is for talk, and for tales, and for the small warm pleasures that cost nothing and are worth everything. But to enjoy it as the light sinks, they will need more than the fire to see by, and the getting of that light is its own small art in this world. So let us look at the little flames of the evening and what it took to make them. As the evening deepens, the fire alone is not quite enough to see by, and so the small lights of the house are brought out. We reach for lights so easily now. A touch, a switch, and a room floods with it. More light in a single bulb than a whole village of this world could summon on its brightest night. It is worth slowing down, here in the warm dark, to feel how different light was for these people, how precious, how carefully made, how small. Because in this house, every scrap of light after sundown had to be made by hand, from things the farm could spare, and it was never wasted, and it was never taken for granted. The great light, of course, is the fire itself, and much of the evening will be lived in its warm, uneven glow, but the firelight throws its brightness unevenly, and pools of shadow gather at the edges of the room, and for close work, or for carrying to a corner, a smaller, steadier flame is wanted. And so we come to one of the most humble and lovely objects in this whole world, the rushlight. A rushlight begins in the wet ground, as a common rush, the kind that grows in any damp field or ditch. It is gathered in its season, and then it is prepared with real care and skill. The green outer skin is peeled away, almost all of it, leaving only the soft white pith inside and one thin strip of the skin along the length to hold the whole thing together. Then the peeled rush is dried, and then it is drawn through hot fat, through bacon grease or mutton fat saved from the cooking, so that the pith drinks up the fat all along its length and becomes, when it dries, a slender pale taper. It costs almost nothing. It uses only a rush from the field and a little fat that would otherwise be waste, and it gives, for its small life, a good clear little flame. Leofrun makes them by the handful when the fat can be spared and stores them away, and tonight she takes one out and sets it to burn. A rushlight is not held in a candlestick. It is gripped in a simple metal clip, at a slant, at an angle, and lit at the upper end, and it burns down slowly toward the clip. And here is the small number to hold on to, the kind of gentle figure a drowsy mind can rest against. A common rushlight, about the length of your hand, and a half, around 12 inches, gives perhaps 10 to 15 minutes of light before it is gone. A longer one, carefully made, might burn the better part of an hour. That is the unit of an evening's light in this world, not hours at the flick of a finger, a few minutes at a time from a slender rush dipped in fat made by hand and burned with care. Think of what that does to an evening. Light is rationed, almost without thinking, the way everything here is rationed against the future. You do the close work, the mending, the fine spinning, while the good light lasts, and then you let it go and sit by the fire's glow for the talk and the tales, which need no light at all. The rhythm of the evening is shaped by the little flames, by how much light there is to spend and what is worth spending it on. There is a thoughtfulness in it, a care, that a world of endless light has quietly lost. There is a lamp, too, in some houses, a shallow dish of clay or stone that holds animal fat with a floating wick, giving a small steady flame that can be set on a ledge or carried low. It is the same idea as the rushlight, light coaxed from the fat the farm can spare, made small and careful and precious. And there are candles somewhere in this world, made of beeswax, giving a fine, clean, steady flame. But candles of good wax are dear, far too dear for a farmhouse, and they go to the church and the hall and the great man's table. In a house like this, the light is firelight and rushlight and the little fat lamp, and that is wealth enough to see the evening through. Think for a moment of how much care is folded into a single one of these little lights, because it tells you everything about the value of light in this world. Someone walked out to the wet ground and gathered the rushes in their season. Someone sat and peeled each one by hand, carefully, leaving that single thin strip of skin for a spine. A fiddling patient job done by the dozen. Someone dried them and saved the fat from the cooking through the year, and drew each rush through the warm grease and set them by. All that gathering and peeling and dipping and saving for a light that burns 10 to 15 minutes and is gone. We would think it an enormous labour for so small a return. They thought it simply the price of seeing in the dark, and they paid it gladly, and they used every minute of light it gave. And so the evenings were shaped by the light in a way ours never are. You did the fine work while the flame lasted, the close mending, the delicate spinning, the things that needed a good clear light held near, and then you let the little flame go, and you sat on in the fire's broad glow for the talk and the tales, which the eyes did not need for. There was a natural rhythm to it, a moving from the lit tasks to the dark ones, from the making to the telling, all governed by how much light there was to spend. The day did not simply stop at sundown. It changed its shape, softened, turned inward toward the fire, and the little flames measured out the last of the doing before the long ease of the talking began. And beyond all these small flames pressing at the shutters is the dark, the true dark. It is worth remembering it is out there, not to frighten us, but to feel how much these little lights meant against it. A rushlight is a small thing, but a small light in a great darkness is one of the oldest comforts the human heart knows. It says, here is warmth, Here is a place, here is safety, come no further dark. And the family gathered in its glow, and in the fire's glow feels exactly that, held in a little ring of light they made themselves, out of rushes and fat and the fire they have kept alive all day. So the lights are lit, the small, careful flames of the evening, and the close work can be finished while they last. But the real treasure of this hour needs no light at all. It lives in the voice, and the memory, and the shared warmth of people gathered close. It is the oldest entertainment there is, and it is waiting for us now in the firelight. So let us set down our work for a while, and listen as the household falls into the pleasures of the evening. Now comes the sweetest part of the whole day, and it is made of almost nothing at all. The work is done, the meal is eaten, the lights are low, and the family draws in close around the fire for the one soft, unhurried hour that belongs to no task. The hour that is simply for being together. There is no stage here, no performance, no entertainment brought in from anywhere else. There is only the fire and the warm dark and the people of the house, and what they can make between them out of words and memory and song. And it turns out that this is a great deal, enough to have carried human evenings for tens of thousands of years, long before this night and long after it. It begins, as these evenings always begin, with talk. The low, easy talk of people who know each other completely, winding through the small news of the day. How the ploughing went, what the weather looks to be doing, a neighbour seen on the road, a ewe that is near her time. The talk of a farming family in the firelight is not clever, and it does not need to be. It is the gentle knitting together of a household at the end of a day, each voice finding its place, the children listening at the edges, the old ones adding what they remember. If you have ever sat quiet in a room where people you love are talking softly of nothing much, and felt yourself grow warm and heavy and safe inside the sound of it, then you already know this hour. It has not changed at all. The fire is low, the house is warm, the night is being kept. Hold that, if you like, as the shape of this whole part of the evening, and let it come back to you whenever you drift and surface. The fire is low, the house is warm, the night is being kept. Nothing more is happening than that, and nothing more needs to. And then, as the talk softens, someone begins to tell a tale. This is the great pleasure of the age, the one entertainment above all others, the telling of stories in the dark. Some are old, so old no one knows where they came from, tales of heroes and monsters and long journeys and the deep past, carried from mouth to mouth across the generations and told again tonight exactly as they were told 100 years ago. Some are closer to home, the story of something that happened to someone's grandfather, worn smooth and shaped by many tellings. And some are simply the memory of the old, the way things used to be, the hard winter long ago, the year of the great harvest, all the small history of a family and a place kept alive in the only way it could be kept, by being spoken aloud by the fire. There is a particular magic in a story told in a dark room by firelight, and these people knew it as well as any people ever have. The voice rises and falls. The faces lean in, lit from below by the glow. The world beyond the little circle of light falls away entirely, and there is only the tale, unspooling in the warm dark, carrying everyone in the room somewhere else for a while. A child hears the same story 100 times and never tires of it, and learns it, and will one day tell it to children of its own by another fire. This is how a whole world remembered itself, before there was any other way. Everything they knew, everything they were, was carried in these firelit voices from one generation to the next, an unbroken thread of telling reaching all the way back to the very beginning. There are riddles too, and this world loved them dearly. Clever little puzzles wrapped in words, describing a thing without naming it. The humble everyday things of a farming life turned into small games for the guessing. A riddle by the fire is a warm little contest. The young against the old, the quick against the slow, laughter when the answer lands, and it asks nothing of anyone but a little wit and a willingness to play. And the pleasure of it is in the turning over, the slow circling toward the answer, until it comes clear and someone smiles in the firelight. And notice what these tales gave, beyond the pleasure of the hour, because it was a great deal. They gave the young their history, the long memory of where they came from and who their people were. They gave everyone a store of examples of courage and foolishness and kindness and greed, the whole shape of how to live carried in the form of a story rather than a lecture. They gave names to the fears of the dark and then often showed those fears defeated so that the night outside felt a little more answerable. And they gave, simply, delight, the deep human delight of a tale well told, which needs no justification at all. A people with no books and no screens were not a people without stories. They were, if anything, richer in them than we are, because every story they had, they carried in themselves and told with their own voice and gave to each other freely in the dark. There is something worth envying in that, gently. Their entertainment was made, not bought. It came out of them, out of memory and wit and voice, shaped to the room and the night and the people in it, never quite the same twice. A tale grew and changed with each telling, took on the teller's own colour, answered the faces listening. It was alive in a way that a thing played from elsewhere can never quite be. And it bound the room together in the making of it, the teller and the listeners all part of one warm act, leaning in, holding the quiet, waiting for the turn. That is a kind of togetherness we have to work rather harder to find now, and here it was, every ordinary evening for free by the fire, and there is song. Someone, sooner or later, begins to sing low and unhurried, and the others may join or may simply listen. In the great halls of the powerful there would be a harp passed hand to hand, and a skilled singer to work it, and the old heroic songs sung properly. Here, in a farmhouse, the music is plainer, a voice in the dark, a familiar tune, a song everyone knows carried softly on the warm air. But it does the same deep thing that music has always done. It gathers the room into one feeling. It softens the hard edges of a hard life. It says, without any words having to mean it, that we are here, together, warm, and that for this 1 hour that is enough. Under it all, if you listen, is the sound the whole evening is made of, and it is one of the most comforting sounds there is. The low murmur of voices in a warm room, heard without quite being understood. A child drifting towards sleep hears it as pure sound, the rise and fall of the people it loves, and there is no safer sound in all the world. You may be hearing it yourself right now, this voice, low in the dark, and letting it become just a warmth at the edge of your mind. That is exactly right. That is exactly what this hour was for. And all the while the tales are told and the songs are sung, no hand in the room is ever quite still, because even in its 1 hour of rest this household is gently, quietly at work. So let us look, softly, at the hands in the firelight and the endless patient making that goes on beneath the talk. Look closely at the people around the fire and you will see that even now, even resting, their hands are working. This is one of the truest things about this world, and one of the easiest for us to forget. There was no such thing really as doing nothing, not because the people were driven or joyless, but because there was always a little task that fit inside the talk, a small making that the hands could do, while the mind rested and the voice told its tale. And so, the evening by the fire, for all its warmth and ease, is also quietly one of the most productive hours of the day, because it is the hour when the hands are free at last from the heavy work and can turn to the fine and patient making, that keeps a household clothed and mended and whole. Chief among these, always, is the wool. We watched it this morning as one of the great never-ending labours of the house, and here it is again, in the evening, in the firelight, because the making of thread and cloth is work that truly never stops. Leofrun takes up her spindle, and this is a thing worth watching, because it is beautiful, and because it is one of the oldest human skills there is. She has a mass of clean combed wool and a spindle which is little more than a slim stick weighted at one end with a round whirl of stone or clay, and with a practised turn of her fingers she sets it spinning, hanging, and draws the wool out, and the twist runs up into it, and raw soft fleece becomes, in her hands, a strong fine continuous thread. There is the number to rest against tonight, and it is the simplest one of all. One thread, a single thread, drawn out and twisted and wound, and then drawn out further, on and on, growing longer by the minute in the firelight. It looks like almost nothing, this one slow thread. But every single thing the family wears began as exactly this, as one thread spun by hand in the evenings, thread after thread after thread, until there was enough to weave. A tunic, a cloak, a blanket against the winter, all of it is thousands upon thousands of feet of hand-spun thread, made in hours exactly like this one, by firelight, while the tales were told. When you next pull a warm blanket up over yourself, think of the one thread, and the hands that made it, turn by patient turn. The spinning can be done almost without looking, once the skill is deep in the fingers, and that is the beauty of it as an evening task. Leofrin can spin and talk and listen to the tale all at once, her hands moving on their own, the spindle rising and falling, the thread growing, while her mind is free to wander wherever the story leads. There is a deep calm in that kind of work, the hands busy and the mind at ease, a rhythm that soothes rather than tires. Many people find it even now, in knitting, in whittling, in any small repeated making done for its own quiet sake. It is one of the oldest ways there is to be peaceful, and this whole room is full of it tonight. And there is the mending. Clothes in this world are far too dear to throw away, made as they are thread by hand, and so they are mended and mended again, and patched, and turned and made to last for years. A tear is sown, a worn place is strengthened, a garment too far gone is cut down for a child, or unpicked for its good wool, or saved as a patch for something else. Nothing is wasted here, not thread, not cloth, not anything. Every object in this house has been made by known hands and mended by known hands, and will be used until it truly cannot be used any more. And there is a kind of respect in that, a closeness between people and their few possessions, that a world of easy plenty can hardly imagine. Others have their own small evening work. A man might sit carving, mending a tool, shaping a new handle, working a piece of wood or horn or leather by the fire's light while the talk goes round. A broken thing is fixed, a needed thing is made. The evening hums, under the tales and the songs, with all this quiet, patient, useful making, the sound of a household that produces very nearly everything it needs with its own hands, in its own time, by its own fire. And every object made this way carried something of the person who made it, and something of the whole line of people before them. The spindle Leofrin turns was likely her mother's, worn smooth by two pairs of hands. The pattern she weaves into the cloth may be one her grandmother taught her, carried down without ever being written, living only in the doing. The tools by the fire, the bowls on the shelf, the loom standing against the wall, were made or mended by known hands and used for years and handed on. Nothing here was anonymous. Nothing came from nowhere. Everything the family owned had a story, a maker, a history of use, and that gave their few possessions a weight and a meaning that our own crowded shelves have quietly lost. To own little, but to know each thing entirely is its own kind of richness, and the making went on so steadily, so much a part of the evening's ease, that it never felt like toil. The spindle turned while the tale was told. The knife shaped the wood while the song was sung. The hands worked at the edge of attention, content, unhurried, and the mind was free the whole time to rest in the warmth and the company. This is work as it was meant to be, perhaps folded gently into life rather than set apart from it, done in company rather than alone, at the body's own pace rather than a clock's. There is a deep calm in it that reaches out of the firelight across all these centuries and settles, if you let it, over you as well. And here is the thing to hold on to, the warm truth under all this work. None of it feels like drudgery in the firelit evening. It is done slowly, in company, wrapped in talk and song and the warmth of the fire. The hands work and the heart rests. It is the very opposite of the tired, hurried making we so often know. It is making as a form of togetherness. The whole family gathered close, each pair of hands busy at something small and good, the thread growing, the wood taking shape, the tale unwinding, the fire holding them all in its glow. This is what an evening was in the year 900, and it is hard, watching it, not to feel that they had hold of something we have partly let slip. All of this, the fire, the food, the tales, the patient hands, sits inside a wider world with its own deep certainties, the things every soul in this room simply knew without ever being told. And understanding those things gently, the shape of their year, the way they held time, is what lets us feel this evening from the inside. So let us widen out softly from the firelit room to the turning world it sits within, and the quiet knowledge these people carried in their bones. Every world rests on a set of things that everyone simply knows, so deeply that no one ever says them aloud, and this world was no different. Let us sit back from the fire for a little while, gently, and feel the shape of the world these people lived inside, the great slow certainties that framed every ordinary evening like this one. Nothing here will ask anything of you. It is only the wider view, the country beyond the firelit room, offered softly, the way you might have the history of a place murmured to you as you drift off in it. The first thing everyone knew was the fire and how to keep it. We have watched it kept all day, banked in the morning, tended through the hours, and it points to something that shaped the whole rhythm of life. Fire was hard to make from nothing. To strike it fresh meant flint and steel and a patient nest of dry tinder and time and luck and cold fingers. And so fire was not made fresh each day. It was kept. The same fire could live for weeks, banked each night under its ash and woken each morning, carried from day to day by careful hands, and fire was a thing shared between houses, so that a dead hearth could be brought back to life with a live ember carried from a neighbour's. To keep the fire was among the most important things a household did, and everyone, from the smallest child, understood it in their bones. The warmth you are feeling tonight is not today's fire. It is a fire that has been alive for a very long time, kept by hands that never let it die. The second thing everyone knew was the year, because the year was the true clock of this world. There were no clocks as we know them, no hours ticking on a wall, no minutes to be counted. Time was told by the sun crossing the sky, by the light coming and going, by the bell of a distant church for those near enough to hear one. But the great measure of time, the one that truly governed a life, was the slow wheel of the seasons, the farming year turning through its familiar round. And that round was so central, so deeply known, that people drew it, and one such drawing survives, and it is a small treasure. It is called the Julius Work Calendar, made at Canterbury a little after this time, around the year 1020, and it is the earliest surviving calendar made in England, and what it shows month by month is simply this world at its work. It shows the ploughing, the same ploughing we watched this morning, the man and the oxen turning the winter field. It shows the sowing, the scattering of seed by hand. It shows the mowing of the hay in high summer, the reaping of the grain with the sickle, the threshing to beat the grain from the straw. It shows the pigs driven into the autumn woods to fatten on fallen acorns, and the feasting of the dark year's end. 12 months, 12 labours. The whole of a farming life laid out in its turning order, so plainly and so warmly that you could hang it beside this fire tonight, and every soul in the room would know exactly what each picture meant, because it was their own life drawn back to them. There is the number to hold in this chapter, the gentlest of all, and it is simply the year itself. 12 months turning, each with its work, round and round, year after year, world without end. A life in this world was not a straight line running forward to somewhere new. It was a circle, the same circle its parents walked and its children would walk, ploughing and sowing and reaping and slaughter over and over, and there was a deep steadiness in living that way, inside a shape you knew completely, that trusted the year to come round again as it always had. And here is a small thing worth turning to your own life, gently, only for the wonder of it. In this world, you waited for things. You waited a whole year for the new grain. You waited the long months for the hens to lay well again in the spring. You waited for the pig to be fat enough, the cheese to be old enough, the season to come round to the food it brought. When was the last time you waited a whole year for something to eat and then tasted it, and knew exactly what it had cost and how long it had taken, and whose hands had brought it to you? They lived inside that waiting always, and it made every ordinary thing they ate a small arrival, a thing earned and welcomed rather than simply had. There is a richness in that we have traded away, without quite meaning to, for the ease of having everything at once. And there is a deep steadiness in living by the year rather than the clock worth resting on gently as you drift. When your time is measured by seasons, nothing is ever truly late, and nothing is truly rushed. The grain comes when it comes. The lambs arrive in their own weeks. The dark of the year gives way to the light of it on its own slow schedule, unhurriable, certain. A life lived inside that rhythm is a life with a very different pulse from ours, slower, wider, more patient, trusting the great wheel to turn as it always has rather than racing a clock that never stops. These people were not idle, as we have seen all day, but they were rarely hurried in the way we are hurried, and there is something in that older pace folded into these long calm evenings, that the whole of this channel is really an attempt to remember. They knew the sun and the sky too, the way we know our clocks. The rising and the setting of the sun told the shape of the day. The slow swing of the light through the year, short and low in the deep of winter, long and high in the height of summer, told the season. And where there was a church near enough to be heard, its bell carried across the fields to mark the hours of prayer, a slow, calm measure laid gently over the day. A person of this world lived close to all of it, the sun, the light, the turning year, and read the time from them without ever having to think. We have traded that knowing for other things, and gained much. But there is a wonder in it, and it is a good thing to remember on a dark night, that the same sun will rise over your own roof tomorrow, exactly as it rose over theirs. The fire is low, the house is warm, the night is being kept. Come back to that whenever the wider world grows too large, and let it settle you again in the small firelit room, because that room is where we truly are, and everything else is only the country around it, offered softly and let go. For inside that turning year, inside all this deep old knowledge, sits this one particular evening, holding, as every real thing does, its own quiet contradictions, the warmth and the cold, the plenty and the want. And a calm mind near the end of a long day does not need to solve those contradictions. It only needs to sit beside them and let them be and find them strangely peaceful. So let us do that together now, and hold the two sides of this world gently in the same hand. There is a way of seeing the world that this whole channel is built on, and it is simply this. Two things can be true at once, and you do not have to choose between them. We have come far enough into this world now to see it whole, and to see that it was, like every real world, made of opposites held together. And there is a great calm to be found here near the end of the evening, in laying those opposites side by side and letting them both simply be true, without hurry, without judgment, the way you might hold a warm cup in two hands and feel both the heat and the comfort of it as one thing. Take the fire, the very centre of everything we have watched today. The fire is the blessing of this house. It is warmth and light and cooked food, and the gathering place of the whole family, the thing without which none of them could live through an English winter. And the fire is also the one true danger of this house, an open flame on an earth floor beneath a roof of dry reed, needing to be watched and tended, and above all banked down safe each night so that its low, kept life never wakes into something wild while the house sleeps. Both things are true. The fire that keeps them alive is the fire they must never quite take their eyes from. And they lived with that, easily, all their lives, giving the fire its due care and taking its warmth gladly, holding the blessing and the danger in the same steady hand. Take the smoke, that soft blue haze hanging under the black roof, filling the house, scenting everything. It stings the eyes when you stand too tall in it. It blackens the thatch. It is, by any measure we would use, a discomfort, something we would rush to be rid of. And that very same smoke keeps the roof dry from beneath, and drives the insects from the thatch, and cures the food hung in the rafters, and carries the good smell of supper through the room. The thing that troubles them is the very thing that protects them. They did not separate the two, because they could not, because they are not separate. They took the smoke whole, the sting and the gift together, and it was simply the air of home. Take the year itself, that turning wheel we just watched. It is a wheel of plenty. In its season it gives the golden harvest, the full store, the fat pig, the good cheese, more than the family can eat at once. And it is a wheel of want because after the plenty comes the lean time, the long weeks of late winter and early spring when the store runs low and the new growth has not yet come, the time the old people called the hungry gap. The same fields that overflow in August grow anxious in March. And they knew both, and they planned for both, setting aside in the plenty against the want, trusting the wheel to turn from one to the other and back as it always had. The abundance and the scarcity were not two different worlds. They were the same year, seen at two different points, and a wise household kept faith with both, and take the animals, breathing there at the end of the room behind their low screen. They bring their smell into the single shared space, and their noise, and their mess, all the plain earthy trouble of keeping beasts under your own roof, and they bring their warmth, their steady living heat rising through the cold night to help keep the whole house from freezing, and their milk in the morning, and their labour in the field, and a kind of company in the dark. On a bitter night, the beasts breathing behind the screen are part of the reason the people do not wake cold. The trouble and the blessing share one roof, one room, one night, and neither could be had without the other. And take the work itself, the whole hard round of it we have watched through the day. It was heavy and cold, and it never truly stopped. The ploughing and the grinding and the spinning and the watching, dawn to dusk, season to season, a life of labour with little rest and less ease. And that same work was the very thing that made the evening sweet. The warmth felt warm because the field was cold. The rest felt deep because the day was long. The pottage tasted good because the belly had earned it. The two things made each other, the labour and the ease, the way the dark makes the fire bright. Take away the hard day and you take away the sweetness of the evening with it. They are not opposites to be chosen between. They are the two halves of one whole life, and a wise heart holds them together and is grateful for the pair. This is perhaps the deepest comfort this old world has to offer us, and it is a quiet one. That a life does not have to be easy to be good. That hardness and warmth can share a single day, a single roof, a single hour, and that the warmth is not spoiled by the hardness, but somehow deepened by it. These people were not waiting for their lives to become easy before they allowed themselves to be content. They found the contentment inside the hardness, in the fire at the end of the cold field, in the bowl at the end of the long day, in the company at the end of the solitary hours. And that is a thing worth carrying out of this firelit room and into your own life, whatever its own hardness and its own warmth may be. This is the register of a grown mind at rest, and it is one of the most peaceful ways there is to see a life. Not everything must be solved. Not every hardness must be fought, and not every comfort must be earned by pretending the hardness is not there. The cold presses at the shutters, and the fire holds the room, and both are true, and there is nothing to do about the pair of them but be glad of the fire and let the cold be the cold. These people lived that way, of necessity, and it gave them a steadiness we might envy, a way of meeting a hard world without bitterness, and a good world without illusion, taking each day whole, the sweet and the hard folded into one another, the way a day and a night fold into one turning. There is the anchor for this quiet chapter, and it is the oldest one we have, the one fire that both warms the house and must be watched. Hold it, and you hold the whole of this world's wisdom in a single image. You take the warmth, you keep the watch, you are grateful and you are careful, both at once, and you sleep. And now, holding both those truths gently, the house itself is ready to do exactly that, to take the warmth, to keep the watch, and to sleep. For the evening has run its course, the tales are told, the hands have stilled at last, and the deepest, quietest part of the whole day is coming. So let us do the last great task of the night together, the one the whole day has been circling toward. Let us bank the fire. The evening is over now, and it is time for the last and most important thing the house does each day. The talk has grown slow, the songs have faded into quiet. One by one the small tasks have been set down, the spinning wound away, the mending folded, the last of the ale drunk. The rushlight has long since burned out, and the fire, which stood high and bright all evening, has been allowed to sink, to settle, to burn itself down toward a bed of deep red embers. The room is dim now, and warm, and very quiet, and everyone in it is heavy with the day and ready for sleep. But before anyone lies down, the fire must be made safe for the night. This is the task the whole day has been circling back toward, the mirror of the very first thing we did this morning. We woke the fire at dawn, now we put it to rest, and we do it in the way this house has done it every single night of its life. Leofra kneels to the hearth one last time, as she did in the dark before dawn. The fire is low now, a glowing bed of embers, its work for the day all done, and she takes the ash, the soft grey ash banked at the edges, and she draws it gently over the embers, covering them, tucking them in, until the red glow is hidden beneath a warm grey blanket of its own ashes. She does not put the fire out. That is the whole art of it. She banks it. She covers the living embers so they will burn slow and low and safe all through the night, sealed under the ash, using almost no fuel, giving off no dangerous flame, but staying alive, staying warm, waiting. This is banking the fire, and it is one of the quietest and most beautiful acts in this whole world. It is a small nightly promise made from one day to the next. It says, "I will not let you die." It says, "There will be warmth in the morning, and it will be this same warmth carried through the dark. The fire that cooked tonight's supper will light tomorrow's dawn. The same low red life kept under the ash bridges the whole black gulf of the night and hands the morning its flame. In a world where making fire fresh was slow and hard, this careful banking was how a household kept its most precious thing alive, night after night, sometimes for a whole winter, sometimes for years. Watch her hands as she does it, because there is a whole inheritance in them. She learned this from her own mother, kneeling at a fire just like this one, and her mother learned it from hers, back and back through more years than anyone could count, how much ash to draw over, how to leave the embers room to breathe without letting them flare, how to read the fire and know it will hold. It looks like the simplest thing in the world, a woman raking ash over coals in the dark. But it is a skill as old as the hearth itself, passed hand to hand down the long line of the keepers of fires, and tonight it lives in her fingers, and tomorrow perhaps it will begin to live in her daughters. The fire is not the only thing being kept alive here. So is the knowing of how to keep it. And when it is done, she sits back for a moment, as she did this morning, and looks at the low covered glow, and there is a quiet satisfaction in it that anyone who has ever banked a fire or locked a door or checked on a sleeping child would know at once. The last thing is done, the house is safe, the warmth is held. There is nothing more the night requires of her. She can lie down now with the others and let go, because the fire will do the rest, keeping its slow, low watch in the middle of the floor until the morning calls it back. There is the anchor of this last part of the night, and it is the one we began with. Come round again. The banked fire, the low red life beneath the ash. Hold it, and you hold the very heart of this whole day and of this whole channel. All through the dark that is coming, while everyone sleeps, the fire will not go out. It will be there, kept, warm, patient, faithful, waiting for the morning. And that is what lets everyone in this house lie down without fear. Not that the night is not cold, not that the dark is not long, but that the fire is banked, and the warmth is kept, and the morning is promised. And there is a lovely completeness to the day now, if you feel the shape of it. This morning, in the dark before dawn, we knelt at this same hearth and woke the fire from its ash, and the whole day unfolded out of that first small flame. Now, at the end of it all, we kneel at the same hearth again and lay the ash back over the embers, and the day folds itself closed. The fire began the day, and the fire ends it. And in between it cooked the food and lit the tails and warmed the wool and held the whole household in its glow. The banking is the last gentle act of a day that turned entirely around the flame, and there is a deep brightness in it, a circle quietly closing, the fire put to bed as the family is about to be. Nothing is hurried in the doing of it. There is no reason to hurry. The night is long and the morning is far off, and the fire will hold either way. Leofren takes her time, drawing the ash just so, watching the glow soften and settle beneath it, making sure it will keep. And when she is satisfied, the room falls into its deepest hush of the whole day, lit now only by the faint red seep of the banked embers, warm and quiet and ready for sleep. The fire is low, the house is warm, the night is being kept. Let that settle over you now as it settles over the house. There is nothing left to do, there is nothing left to tend. The last task is done, the fire is safe under its ash, and the only thing remaining for every soul beneath this roof is to lie down in the warm dark and sleep. So let us watch them settle gently into their places along the walls and make themselves ready for the first of the 2 sleeps of the night. Now the house lies down, and it does so simply in the warm dark close together. There are no bedrooms here. There is no going away to a separate quiet place. There is only this one room, the one we have been in all day, and the sleeping is done right here, in the same space where the fire was kept and the meal was eaten and the tales were told. As the fire sinks to its banked glow, the family settles into their places along the walls, and the room becomes, quietly, a bedchamber, the way it has become so many things across the hours of this single day. Their beds are simple. Along the walls run low benches and heaps of clean straw, and this is where they sleep, wrapped close in the same wool they wore through the day, cloaks and blankets pulled over them against the cold. A farming family sleeps plainly, on the bench and the straw and the earth, under wool, close to the banked fire, close to each other. There is no soft mattress here, no bed set apart in a room of its own. There is the bench and the straw and the wool and the warmth, and for a body tired to the bone at the end of a long day, that is a bed as deep and welcome as any in the world. And there is a warmth in that closeness, in every sense. The heat of one body helps to keep the next. No one sleeps alone and cold in a far room. They sleep together, all in the one space, breathing the same smoke-scented air, warmed by the same kept fire. At the far end, behind their low screen, the animals settle too. The cow, the ewes, whatever beasts share the roof in the cold months, fold their legs beneath them and grow still, their breathing slow and deep and enormous in the quiet, and their warmth rises into the room and joins the fire's warmth and helps to hold the whole house against the freezing dark outside. It is a strange thought to us, sharing our sleep with our animals, but on a bitter night it is a gift. That great living heat at the end of the room and the soft sound of the beasts breathing in the dark is one of the oldest and most peaceful sounds a person can fall asleep to. There is a great tenderness in how they lie, if you let yourself picture it softly. The small children are tucked in among the grown, in the warmest places, closest to the banked fire and to the shelter of other bodies. The old ones have their settled spots worn to them over years. Everyone knows where they belong in the dark without a word, the way a family knows the shape of itself, and the wool that covers them is the very wool we watched, being spun and weaved, the thread drawn out by firelight, the cloth made by these same hands. They are sleeping, quite literally, under their own work, wrapped in the long patient labour of 100 evenings like tonight. There could hardly be a warmer blanket than that. Listen too to how the sounds of the house change as it settles. The bright talk of the evening is gone. In its place comes the slow, soft music of a house going to sleep, the deep breathing of tired bodies, the rustle of straw as someone turns, the long sigh of a beast lying down, the small, settling ticks of the sinking fire. These are the sounds a child of this world fell asleep to every night of its life, and they are the sounds of safety itself, the sounds that say, everyone is here, everyone is near, everyone is warm, and nothing is wrong. If you listen to my voice the same way now, as just another one of those soft settling sounds in a warm dark house, then you're hearing it exactly as they would have wished you to. There is the gentle number of this quiet hour, and it is simply one room, one fire, one family and its beasts all together, under one low roof, in one shared warmth. Everything this household is, everything it loves and needs and keeps, is gathered now into this single small space, sealed against the night, breathing slow. There is no scattering of the household into separate rooms behind separate doors. There is only the one room holding all of them at once, the way a pair of cupped hands holds water. And a person falling asleep in it is never for one moment alone. And think how safe a child grew up feeling, laid down each night in the middle of all this. There was never the aloneness of a dark room of one's own, never the long, solitary dark that so many children have to learn to bear. There was only ever the one warm room, full of the breathing of the people who loved you, the glow of the kept fire, the great soft presence of the beasts, the certainty that everyone you belonged to was here, near, within reach in the dark. A child of this world fell asleep inside its whole family every single night, wrapped in the sound and warmth of them, and there are few deeper securities than that. Whatever else this hard world withheld, it gave its children that freely, and it is no small thing to have been given. You may have known something like it yourself once, a long time ago, falling asleep in a house full of the soft sounds of your people, safe in the knowledge that others were awake and near and keeping things while you let go. That feeling is very old. It is this feeling, exactly this, reaching down 1100 years to you, and you can have it again now if you like, lying here in the warm dark of this old house among the sleeping, kept and safe and near to everyone, with nothing at all required of you but to close your eyes. The children are already going under, the way children do, dropping into sleep almost the moment they are still and warm. The grown ones follow more slowly, letting the day loosen its hold, feeling the warmth of the wool and the fire and the closeness seep into their tired bodies. There is a murmur or two in the dark, a last soft word, a child settled, and then even that fades. The room grows quiet. The banked fire glows low and red in the middle of the floor. The smoke thins to a faint blue drift under the black roof, and the house, all of it, begins to breathe together in the slow, deep rhythm of sleep. The fire is low, the house is warm, the night is being kept. There is nothing to hold on to now, and nothing to do, and nowhere to be but here, warm, in the dark, among the sleeping, If you're drifting, let yourself drift. The house is asleep or nearly, and there is no better time to follow it down. For they're sinking now into the first of the night's two sleeps, the deep early sleep that this whole world knew, and it is one of the quietest and most restful things we will see all night. So let us go down into it with them, gently into the first sleep. The house is asleep now, and it has gone down into a particular kind of sleep, one that this old world knew and that we have mostly forgotten, because the people of this age did not sleep the way we try to, in one long unbroken stretch from night until morning. They slept in two parts. There was a first sleep and there was a second sleep, and between them a quiet wakeful hour, and this was simply how the night was shaped, so ordinary that no one thought to remark on it, so common that it lasted for many hundreds of years across much of the world. And the first sleep is where the house is now, sunk deep in the early dark, the soundest and heaviest sleep of the whole night. They went down into it easily, as tired people do. There was no lying awake, no turning over and over, no watching the dark and waiting for rest to come. They had worked hard in the cold all the long day. They were warm now and fed and safe and close together, and the body knows what to do with all of that. It lets go. It sinks. Within moments of lying still, the whole house slid down out of the waking world and into the deep, and now they lie in it, wrapped in wool, breathing slow, gone entirely into the first sleep. This first sleep is the body's deep work, and it does not need us to understand it to do it. In these early hours the sleep is at its heaviest, the most restoring of the whole night, the tired body sinking to the very bottom of rest and beginning to mend itself from the long day. The ache goes out of the muscles. The cold of the field worked so deep into the ploughman and the shepherd and the boy finally fully leaves them. Whatever the day took is quietly given back, down here in the dark, in the warm, in the first deep sleep. It is the oldest medicine there is, and it asks nothing, and it is working now, unseen, in every sleeper in the house. There is a great stillness over the house in this hour. The fire is banked low, a soft red glow beneath its ash, throwing almost no light now, only the faintest warmth. The animals are down and quiet. The smoke has thinned to almost nothing. The only sounds are the slow breathing of the sleepers, and now and then the settling tick of the fire, and beyond the walls the small voice of the wind in the thatch, and further off the enormous silence of a dark country with almost no one awake in it. It is as quiet as the world ever gets, this hour of the first sleep, and it is deeply, profoundly restful, even only to watch, and the house keeps them all, without effort, while they sleep. The walls hold in the warmth, the roof holds off the weather, the barred door holds back the dark, the banked fire holds its low life in the middle of the floor. The beasts breathe their heat into the room. Everything the household built and tended through the day is working now quietly, on its own, to keep the sleepers safe, and none of it needs a waking hand. This is what a home is in the end, a thing you make with great care while you're awake so that it can hold you gently while you're not. And this old house holds its people as well tonight as any house ever held anyone. There is nothing to say about this hour really, and that is the beauty of it. Nothing is happening. Nothing needs to happen. The whole day's work is done, the fire is safe, the house is warm, and everyone in it is simply, deeply asleep. The first sleep asks nothing of anyone. It is pure rest, the body repairing itself in the warm dark, the mind gone wherever minds go in the deepest sleep, the whole household laid down together and let go. If you have been following along and feel yourself sinking too, then you are exactly where you should be, going down with the house into the first sleep, and there is no reason at all to hold on. And there is a comfort too in knowing that this deep first sleep was trusted. These people did not lie down anxious about their rest the way we so often do. They did not count the hours they might get, or fret that they would wake in the night, because waking in the night was simply part of the night, expected and welcome. They gave themselves to the first sleep completely, knowing the second would come after, knowing the quiet hour between them was a friend and not a failure. There is a lesson folded in there gentle and worth carrying, that a mind at peace with how it sleeps better than a mind that fights it. They fought nothing. They lay down warm and let the dark take them, and it did kindly, the way it is taking the house now. So let the house sleep and let the picture of it hold you. The low red glow in the middle of the floor, the wool rising and falling with slow breath, the beasts still at their end, the smoke gone to a faint thread under the black roof. It is a scene of perfect rest. A whole small world laid down safe and warm in the middle of a vast cold dark, and there is nothing in it that is not peaceful. You could rest your whole mind on it, and drift, and lose the thread of my voice entirely, and nothing would be lost because the house will still be sleeping when you come back, or it will still be sleeping if you never do. Outside, the night deepens toward its middle. The cold grows harder, the dark grows, if anything, darker. But none of it can reach in here, where the fire is kept, and the walls are shut, and the wool is warm, and the bodies are close. The house sleeps on, held safe inside its own kept warmth, and the night moves slowly over it, hour by hour, toward the quiet turning point in the middle when, gently and without any alarm, the sleepers will begin to stir. Because the first sleep does not run all the way to morning. Somewhere past the middle of the night, softly, the house will wake into the strange and lovely wakeful hour that these people simply expected and never feared. It is one of the most peaceful things in this whole old world, that quiet hour between the sleeps, and it is where we're going next, gently, as the night turns over toward the morning. Somewhere in the deep middle of the night, without any alarm, the house begins to wake. It is not a hard waking. No one sits up startled. It is the softest thing, a slow surfacing out of the first sleep, the way a boat rises gently to the top of a swell. One after another, quietly, the sleepers drift up toward the surface of the night, into a stretch of wakefulness that sits between the two sleeps like a still pool between two deep waters. And they are not troubled by it. They expected it. This is the watching hour, the quiet wakeful time in the middle of the night, and to them it is simply part of how a night is made. What do they do in it? Very little, and all of it gentle. Some lie still in the warm dark and let their minds wander, half dreaming, thinking of nothing much, resting even while awake. Some murmur softly to one another, a quiet word between two people in the dark, the kind of low talk that belongs only to the middle of the night. Some rise for a moment to see to the fire or to step out and back or to tend a child, and some pray quietly in the stillness, because the deep of the night was long held to be a good and holy time to speak into, when the world was quiet enough to be heard in. There is no rule to the hour. There is only the soft wakefulness itself, unhurried, unworried, held between the sleeps. Somewhere in the house, perhaps, a mother is awake with a small child. The little one stirred, and she rose to it, and now she sits in the low glow of the banked fire with the child against her, quieting it back toward sleep. She has done this 100 times. She will do it 100 more. There is nothing remarkable in it and nothing hard, only the oldest tenderness there is. A woman awake in the dark of the night so that a child can sleep. She rakes the ash a little at the fire, and the embers glow and the faint warmth reaches her, and she sits with her child in the quiet, keeping the small watch that mothers have always kept, and no one will ever know she did it. And it is one of the most important things happening in the whole world tonight. And beyond the walls of the house, out in the black cold field, someone else is keeping watch too. Do you remember the oxherd from the morning? The one whose oxen turned the field. His work does not end when the sun goes down, because at night the oxen must still be watched out on the pasture, safe from anything that might trouble them, and that watching falls to him. We have his own words for it, from that same old book, and they are the truest words in this whole night. When the ploughman unyokes the oxen, he says, then I lead them to pasture, and all night I stand over them, watching for thieves, and in the morning I deliver them again to the ploughman, well filled and watered. All night I stand over them, sit with that in the warm dark while the house sleeps and the mother rocks her child, and you yourself drift at the edge of sleep. All night, out in the cold field under the enormous dark sky, one man stands awake over the sleeping beasts, so that in the morning the plough can go out and the whole house can be fed. He is not warm by any fire. He is not wrapped in wool by the hearth. He is out there in the dark keeping watch while everyone he works for sleeps safe indoors. And he does it every night, and no one thanks him, and no one remembers his name, and he calls it simply his work. And there is no complaint in his words. That is the thing that stays with you. He does not say it is hard, though it must be. He does not ask to be thanked. He simply tells what he does, plainly, the way the ploughman did and the shepherd did, as though it were the most natural thing in the world to give your nights to the keeping of another man's beasts. Well filled and watered, he says, of the oxen he hands back in the morning. That is his pride, that he brought them through the night safe and fed, ready for the day's work. His whole worth in his own quiet telling is that the thing given into his keeping came through the dark unharmed. There are worse things to build a life on than that, so hold him there, in your mind, as you drift. The oxherd in the dark field, patient, faithful, awake. And hold the mother too by the low fire, her child growing heavy against her, and feel how the two of them, the watcher outside and the watcher within, wrap this sleeping house between them like two hands cupped around a flame. Nothing can come to the house tonight that these quiet keepers do not stand against, and they ask nothing back. They simply keep the watch, because that is their part, and because someone must, and because the sleepers they guard are worth the cold and the dark and the long hours awake. There it is, the whole heart of this channel, standing out in a field 1100 years ago. The people who keep the night so that others can sleep, the mother by the fire, the oxherd in the field, the fire itself banked and faithful under its ash. All through the dark, while the house rests, someone and something is awake and watching and keeping the warmth and the safety alive, so that the sleepers can let go completely and trust the night and sink. That is what it means to be carried through the dark by hands you never see. It is happening right now, in this house, in this field, in this hour, and it has never once stopped. The fire is low, the house is warm, the night is being kept. The watching hour passes gently as it always does, and one by one the sleepers grow heavy again, and the mother lays her sleeping child back down, and the wakefulness softens, and the whole house begins to sink once more, down toward the second sleep, the last and deepest sleep of the night. So let us go down with them, one final time, into the deep of the night, and let the morning take care of itself. And so the house goes down into its second sleep, and this is where we will leave it, and where we will stay. Everything is quiet now. The watching hour has passed. The murmurs have faded. The mother sleeps, and her child sleeps, and the men sleep, and the animals sleep at their end of the room, and the whole household has sunk back down together into the last deep sleep of the night, the second sleep, the one that runs gently on toward the morning. There is nothing left for anyone to do. The day is fully done. The night is more than half gone, and all that remains is rest. Let us look, one last time, at the room, and let it be the last thing we hold. The door is shut and barred against the dark. The pottage pot sits cooling at the edge of the hearth, the little rushlight burned out long ago. Along the walls, wrapped in their wool, the family lies sleeping, close together, breathing slow. Behind the low screen, the beasts are still, and in the very middle of the floor, where it has been all day, the fire glows on, low and red beneath its blanket of grey ash, its last thin thread of smoke climbing up into the black thatch. It is banked and safe and alive, and it will keep till morning. It always keeps till morning. And out beyond the walls, in the cold dark field, the oxherd is still standing over his oxen, keeping his long watch so that the house need not. He is the one awake in all this sleeping world. He and the fire, the two faithful keepers of the night, one out in the field and one here in the middle of the floor, holding the dark at bay between them so that everyone else can sleep. That is the whole picture of this world in the end. The sleepers, safe and warm and let go completely, and around them, unseen, the ones who keep the night. Let the whole day settle over the house now, one last time, like the ash over the embers, the dark before dawn and the fire woken, the cold field and the oxen and the horse boy calling, the shepherd faithful on his hill, the quern turning, the loom knocking, the smell of the baking bread, the light failing, the door barred, the fire built high, the pottage, the ale, the tales in the glow, the patient hands, the fire banked, the beds along the walls, the two sleeps and the quiet hour between them. A whole ordinary day and night, from waking to waking, lived 1,000 years ago by people whose names we will never know. And yet here it is, held complete and warm in the dark, and here you are, holding it with me. At the very beginning, a long time ago now, I asked you a quiet question, and I promised we would answer it by the end. What was it like, I asked, to be kept safe through the dark by hands you never saw? And now you know. It was like this. It was warm and close and quiet. It was a banked fire and a shut door and the breathing of the people you love in the dark all around you. It was a mother awake with a child, and a man awake in a field, and a low red life kept under the ash through all the black hours until the light came back. It was being carried, without ever having to know it, by the faithful hands that kept the night. And here is the gentlest truth of all. It has never stopped. Somewhere tonight, right now, a fire is still being kept for a morning that has not yet come. Someone is still awake so that someone else can sleep, and you are lying inside that same long keeping this very night, exactly as they did 1,100 years ago. And think, if a last small wonder will help you drift, of how much of that old night is still with you, right now, in your own mouth. Nearly every warm, plain word we have used tonight was already old in that smoky room 1,100 years ago. Hearth and home and house, fire and warmth and bread, day and night and sleep and dream and bed. When you say good night, you are speaking the language of that house, almost unchanged, carried down to you across all those centuries by unbroken hands, the same way the fire was carried from dusk to dawn. The people of this night gave you the very words you will fall asleep in. That is a kind of permanence deeper than any building. They are gone, and their house is long fallen, and yet here they are, in the words on your own lips, keeping you company in the dark. So stay here, in the warm dark, in the safest corner of the oldest ordinary night the English language can still remember. You do not need to hold on to any of it. You do not need to remember a single word. The fire will keep burning if you drift. The house will sleep whether you follow it or not. There is nothing left to do but rest, here, among the sleeping, held and warm and kept. The fire is banked, the old house is settled in its own words, and the night will keep till morning. Sleep well, friend. If some small part of tonight stayed with you, the boy horse in the field, the mother by the fire, the low red life under the ash, you might leave a word about it below whenever you wake, and I would be glad to read it. A gentle like and a subscribe help these quiet nights find the others who are looking for them. And when you are ready for another one, I will be here, with another old night to lie down inside, perhaps a night out on an English road, by the swinging light of a lantern, with somewhere warm waiting at the end of it. Until then, sleep well. The fire is kept. The night will hold. Good night.